Aí, galera.
Aí.
For another term as your president.
Nixon chooses Chicago to open his assault on Humphrey in September. There, where only 1 week earlier streets and parks were battleground, the Republican draws 400,000 people. A triumphal first week carries him from Chicago to San Francisco and back across the land. Buoyant, wherever he campaigns, he underscores his message. The nerve center for is It's been transformed by radio antennas, bunkers, and barbed wire into the joint U.S.-Vietnamese command post. On the airstrip at La Vang, tons of artillery and ammunition are loaded and moved out to forward fire bases. The objective? To hit the enemy anywhere between Da Nang and the DMZ and west into Laos again if necessary.
The Marines and airborne advanced into the communist line.
Galera, eu vou transmitir aqui o vídeo 1 e o vídeo 2, que tá chegando o vídeo 3 já daqui 10 minutinhos, hein? Não vai dar tempo de transmitir os dois, mas vou fazer isso já.
American youth today has its fringes, but that's part of the greatness of our country. I have great faith in American youth. The youth of today can change the world, and if they understand that, I think that we're going to go forward to a great age, not just for Americans, but for peace and progress for all the people in the world.
This game depends, however, on his unwritten alliance with Reagan. Announcing open candidacy, Reagan now speeds from caucus to caucus. If Reagan can persuade his Southern friends to break their prior pledges to Nixon, the convention will come apart.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, presents Aeronautics and Space Report.
At Christmas time, the crew of the USS Pueblo returned home after nearly a year of captivity in North Korea. Hooker and his crew were met by relatives in San Diego. After a tearful reunion, the men unfolded a tale of torture at the hands of the communists bent on extracting confessions. Weeks of probing lay ahead, but for the Pueblo crew, it was a time for rejoicing and sorrow. Grief for the one shipmate.
Astronauts Neil A. Armstrong, Edwin E. Aldrin, and Michael Collins, the three men who will make the next and most historic round trip to the moon.
What?
The men rose early, ate breakfast, and dressed in their spacesuits.
They must work in a weightless environment, keeping their spacecraft and themselves in good condition. Data must be collected and reported. Experiments must be performed, including photography both inside and outside the spacecraft. Because of the film speed, these actions appear faster than they actually were.
In Vietnam, Viet Cong rockets hit Saigon during the night for the first time in 2.5 weeks, killing 2 civilians and wounding 25.
The new communist campaign in Vietnam continues. Just after midnight their time, a band of Viet Cong raiders blew up a power installation and attacked 2 police stations in Saigon. Other small bands still roam the city.
Hamburger Hill was the biggest engagement so far in Operation Apache Snow, started 3 weeks ago. The objective of the operation was not the hill, but control of the Asha, the main infiltration route threatening northern coastal cities.
Galera, falta 5 minutos aí para mais um lançamento. Vamos esperar aí. 1h da tarde, é isso aí.
There was a pause in the fighting. Big guns were cleaned.
The 10-day offensive against the dug-in enemy cost 55 American lives and 300 wounded. Enemy losses are put at 400.
President Nixon's interest is in getting the U.S. out of the war in some acceptable way, whereas President Thu's interest is in seeing his own government survive the end of the war.
In North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh died. He had led his communist forces through 3 decades of warfare. After defeating the French, he fought the U.S. and her allies for 9 years.
I believe we must take risks for peace, but calculated risks, not foolish risks. We shall not trade our defenses for a disarming smile or charming words. We are prepared for new initiatives in the control of arms in the context of other specific moves to reduce tensions around the world. I believe that America is not going to become a garrison state or a welfare state or a police state simply because the American people will defend our values from those forces, external or internal, that we challenge or erode.
The moment you mention nuclear weapons today, a lot of people get jittery and they seem they don't even want to discuss it. Nuclear weapons are a deterrent to war. We ought to remain the strongest nuclear power in the world. And we won't use any weapons unless we have to. But we will use any weapons if necessary to protect America and her people.
More than 350,000 people, mostly young people, showed up to hear the greatest rock groups in the country.
Vamos ver se atualizou alguma
The promoters
coisa aqui.
billed it as 3 days of peace and music. And for most people, it was just that. Little thanks to the promoters. There were many problems.
Eu baixei
like
umas
not enough
fotos, cara, que
sanitation
eu vi aqui, ó.
facilities, food, or water.
Eu vi, achei no Twitter lá, mano, isso aqui.
It'll be 2 or 3 days before all the people leave the peace and quiet of the Catskill Mountains. It may be longer before this area
Dá uma
returns
dica
to
pro
normal.
próximo negócio.
Despite the problems, and there were many problems, though they were not.
Tablets or liquid.
Vamos ver como é que vai ser.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Underneath it says, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace." I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene. That's all right, I don't mind a bit. How is the quality of the TV? Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is. Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent? Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
Astronauts Collins, Aldrin, and Armstrong came out of their sealed quarantine tank last night and today had their first day at home in peace. But it will not last long. The schedule in front of them is in some ways more arduous than their trip to the moon.
Olha lá, entrou a outra fita, galera. Bora lá ver qual que é. Volume 3, hein?
Military casualty
Ao
figures were
vivaço pra
released today
vocês,
in
hein?
Saigon. 11 Americans were killed in
north central Laos. Now the communists may want to begin the ceasefire talks.
and 3,200 South Vietnamese wounded.
Ao vivaço, hein?
In one important aspect, the offensive has backfired badly on the North Vietnamese. It has harmed them politically inside South Vietnam. For the first time, there is a remarkable degree of political solidarity in the country. President Thieu is firmly in control. The only criticism has come from opposition leaders who felt they had to say something to protect their positions. Even they have not blamed Thieu for the communist
Cara, eu não vi
successes.
muitos
President
gamers
Thieu's
transmitindo
position
essa
is still
aqui, cara,
largely dependent on the
no
support he
Brasil,
gets
mas
from
vamos lá, né?
Washington. He is the American choice to run Vietnam.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
We are certifying the 26th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
That amendment, as you know, provides for the right to vote of all of our young people between 18 and 21. 11 million new voters as a result of this amendment.
A massive shock, rippling out of the mountains just north of the San Fernando Valley. Hitting here, missing there, but shaking most of Southern California. Fires everywhere.
I think Pete's absolutely right about this medical job. This is the first time we've ever had the space available to really adequately test a guy up there to see how he behaves under zero gravity for long periods. So we really don't know what's going to happen to the guy in the long term. And this is probably, to my mind, the single most important thing that we've got to do in Total Skylab is find out whether man himself does have a future in space in terms of making long journeys to somewhere else.
Now people are beginning to pick up the pieces.
What are you looking for down there?
Money and all sorts of things like spoons, forks, and knives, parts of mirrors, parts of plates, razor blades.
Have you found anything?
Yep, money, spoons, razor blades.
How much money did you find?
$4.98
How long are you going to keep digging?
till I have to go home.
I will only say that I've had some experience, and a great deal of experience, as a matter of fact, in this past year in dealing with communist leaders.
07, anota aí, 07,
making a
anota
bargain
aí.
with them is not easy. And you get something from them only when you have something they want to get from you. The only way we're going to get our POWs back is to be doing something to them, and that means hitting military targets in North Vietnam, retaining a residual force in South Vietnam, and continuing the mining of the harbors of North Vietnam.
Tá falando sobre a guerra do Vietnã aí.
Apollo 16 lifts America back into space and gives our astronauts a dune buggy tour of lunar land.
Okay. I think that it's interesting to consider what Margaret Mead said about women who are honored in authority in this country. She said that, in fact, widows are the only such women, because what you have to do is be married to a man who has a certain position, live out your role of childbearing and housekeeping, then, through no fault of yours, he dies, And then alone is it all right for you to take over his job. We've decided that that's awfully hard on the men.
$25. Isso aqui tá parecendo a Mega Sena, meu amigo.
Señor presidente, vemos este hermoso espectáculo de niños en brazos de sus madres. Aquí están dos jóvenes madres con dos hermosas niñas que las abrazan.
At this rally in Silver Spring, Maryland, Governor Wallace's campaign is crushed by violence. Arthur Bremer, seen applauding a 21-year-old busboy, uses the cover of the crowd and the confusion to get close enough to the candidate for an attempted assassination.
Today was the critical operation for the governor to remove a bullet lodged near his spinal column and to find out whether the bullet had cut his spine. A controversial day in politics. A man arrested trying to bug the offices of the Democratic National Committee in Washington turns out to be an employee of President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign committee. And perhaps a significant day for the Vietnam peace negotiations. The president of the Soviet Union has left Hanoi saying they will resume soon.
Mother Nature unleashes the fury of Hurricane Agnes across 4 states: Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York. 134 lives are lost. Thousands are homeless. It runs into the millions.
I can assure you that as Secretary General of this organization, I am deeply worried about this development. It is extremely serious. And it is for this reason that I decided on my own, I want to stress this, to put this question of terrorism and acts of violence on the agenda of the next General Assembly.
Next stop, Moscow. Purpose, a summit meeting between President Nixon and Soviet leaders Brezhnev and Kosygin. Agreement is reached on limitations of nuclear weapons, the sale of American wheat to the Soviets, and a trade of beverages, our soft drinks for their vodka.
Os caras vão assinar o tratado de paz aí.
Another victory for personal diplomacy on a global scale.
In a field 4 miles from London Airport. The tail section was intact, but the body of the plane was demolished.
With the Paris peace talks stalled, the Vietnam War worsens. Responding to a devastating Viet Cong offensive, President Nixon orders new measures.
All entrances to North Vietnamese ports will be mined to prevent access to these ports and North Vietnamese naval operations from these ports.
Gordon was in Hanoi apparently to talk about a new peace effort. He said the visit was successful and that the Soviet Union will do everything it can to bring about a de-escalation of the Vietnam War.
Paris continues to be the focal point of world attention. American negotiators arrive for another in a long series of peace talks with the North Vietnamese. Presidential aide Henry Kissinger, a key figure in the lengthy and complex conferences, sounds
Porque aparentemente é o volume 3, 2, 1, né?
Federal indictments Washington
54.
today in the Watergate bugging affair.
In spite of the increased security, West Germany continues to offer political asylum to hijackers from communist countries. Just last week, the West German government refused to return 10 Czechoslovakians who killed a pilot during their hijack escape to the West.
As you know, I will soon be visiting the People's Republic of China, the Soviet Union. I go there with no illusions. We have great differences with both powers. We shall continue to have great differences. But peace depends on the ability of great powers to live together on the same planet despite their differences. We would not be true to our obligation to generations yet unborn if we fail to seize this moment to do everything in our power to ensure that we will be able to talk about those differences rather than to fight about them in the future.
Peking, historic site for an unprecedented meeting between East and West. Responding to a special invitation, President and Mrs. Nixon arrive, and Premier Zhou Enlai is on hand to extend an official welcome to the presidential couple. It's Mr. Nixon's initial move toward his self-proclaimed goal, a generation of peace. A confident president, anxious to end the diplomatic freeze between the United States and China. Mao.
07
Top
de novo.
aide Henry Kissinger joins the talks with Premier Zhou Enlai on Vietnam and East-West trade. The First Lady views giant pandas, a gift of the People's Republic. Personal presidential diplomacy tentatively parts the bamboo curtain.
Estranho não ter aparecido aquele código no canto já. Via satélite. Esses são os prisioneiros, acho que no Vietnã, os prisioneiros americanos, acho. Que estão no Vietnã, estavam, né?
His condemnation of U.S. military actions in Vietnam and revealing he brought back assurances from Hanoi about the release of American prisoners of war.
Including the foreign minister, talked for well over an hour with the prime minister, 2 hours and 45 minutes with the foreign minister, and I've got both verbal and written assurances about the prisoners.
Clarence Kelly, the president's choice to be permanent head of the FBI, cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee today. We'll have reports tonight on the economy, and we'll see what happened to a fat man who had part of his insides cut out in an effort to be a thin man.
Massive crowds take to the streets of the Egyptian capital. Euphoria. After 5 lean years, there are signs that Egypt is about to stand on its own feet. They are cheering this man. It was then that President Anwar Sadat dropped his diplomatic bomb. He announced that the Russians had been asked to withdraw their advisors from Egyptian soil after nearly a decade of Soviet-Egyptian cooperation.
Televised violence can increase aggressive tendencies in some children. We will have to manage our program.
I congratulate you for that statement.
Ballot of the International Olympic Committee. Out of 70 ballots,
Cara, dessa vez tá aparecendo muito número.
36 were to withdraw the invitation to the Rhodesian team, 31 were for maintaining it, and 3 were blank. This means the invitation to the Rhodesian team to participate in the games of the 20th Olympiad has been withdrawn.
The Rhodesians left angry. Representatives of Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda were jubilant. The expulsion of Rhodesia culminated a campaign that saw American black athletes pledge to walk out with the Africans. Now their teams, they say, will unpack their suitcases, give up their threatened boycott, and the Summer Olympics can go on.
Munich houses the Olympic flame as athletes from all over the globe gather for the traditional games. Officials hope that world tensions will not create an incident.
Cara, é muito número, velho. Ainda não apareceu o código ali no canto. Estranho.
this incident. I'm not going to comment from the White House on a third-rate burglary attempt. Obviously, he said, we don't condone that kind of second-rate activity. There was little Republican reaction today to the charges that they mounted a massive intelligence and sabotage operation against the Democrats.
He emerged world champion. Spassky had phoned the judge and conceded. With a stronger position, Fisher had achieved at adjournment the night before.
In Paris, on Avenue Kléber, in a former Gestapo headquarters, politicians have been talking for 4 years about ending a war. The truth of the matter is, the Paris peace talks, hailed as a major breakthrough in 1968, have by 1972 achieved nothing. The delegates still turn up, make accusatory speeches, and leave. And yet in other parts of Paris, secret meetings between Americans and North Vietnamese did attempt to break the deadlock. The American initiative was led by President Nixon's special advisor, Dr. Henry Kissinger. Since 1970, he has met North Vietnamese leaders 12 times. At their meetings, he offered much of what the communists demanded: the withdrawal of American forces and new elections in South Vietnam. But all offers were rejected or ignored, and the whole American formula publicly rebutted by Hanoi.
Apollo 17, first nighttime launch in history.
Lançamento da Apollo 17 noturno, primeiro da história.
The body of former Chief Executive Harry S. Truman lies in state. Death came at 88 after a long and typically courageous struggle with illness. Former President and Mrs. Johnson and President and Mrs. Nixon attend rites.
Mr. President, are you ready to take the constitutional oath? If you will place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand, and please repeat after me. I, Richard Nixon, do solemnly swear.
I, Richard Nixon, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve and protect
and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. So help me God.
Meu filho, que Deus te ajude nisso.
Alexander Butterfield drops a bombshell. The president has secretly taped all of his White House conversations, including those involving Watergate. The president had already installed a new attorney general to handle Watergate. Harvard law professor Archibald Cox becomes special prosecutor. Picking up the gauntlet, Cox goes before Sirica to subpoena the elusive tapes.
Código lá,
In his
cacete.
client's behalf, Charles Allen Wright pleads confidentiality to deny Cox's demand. Sirica holds Cox.
Quase perdi o código pesado.
The abrupt departure of Cox and Richardson draws a fierce storm of protest.
Ó,
The president backs down.
já entra lá, já vou pedir para meus contatos entrar já.
Falls short of its promise when 2 of the key tapes mysteriously disappear. In 18 minutes of another tape turn up blank. Pressed for an explanation, Presidential Secretary Rosemary Woods blames it on a variety of miscues. Nevertheless, the House Judiciary Committee, under the chairmanship of Peter Rodino, is convened to consider impeachment. While the president was involved, that he did not realize or appreciate at any time the implications of his involvement. And I think that when the facts come out...
We went on the pay board in an effort to try to make the controls work, but it's now very clear that there's no real attempt to control inflation. The only real attempt is to control the wages of working people.
In the House of Representatives, there's not a member left who thinks the president will not be impeached, and apparently not many who will side with him when it comes to a vote.
Ih, começou a dar rewind agora. Acho que acabou a transição. Vamos ver. Ficou azul daí. Nada.
The weekly military casualty figures were released today in Saigon. 11 Americans were killed in combat, 20 were wounded. More than 900 South Vietnamese soldiers were killed and more than 3,200 South Vietnamese wounded.
Ver se dá alguma coisa aqui nova. Não. É isso. Clicar aqui. Vamos ver se ele... Vamos ver o que acontece aqui. Vamos ver se eles dão a próxima notícia. Ah, não. Só tem isso até agora. Vamos ver se saiu Day 4. Aparece aqui. É pra aparecer aqui, ó. Vamos atualizar aí pra ver qual é que é. Vamos ver aí. Mas, cara, muito louco isso aqui, cara. O código eu vou postar lá no meu Twitter, hein? Dá uma olhada lá. Vamos ver aí, tomara que apareça, que a transmissão já acabou. Mas não terminou ainda isso aqui. Não tem nada aqui. Só uma imagem mesmo. Esse telefone não vai tocar, hein? Tem aqui atrás o mapa do Warzone, cara, do Verdansk lá, ó, igualzinho. Então aqui é o Boneyard, aqui. Aqui as casinhas. Vamos ver aí. Cara, aparentemente não tem nada. Não tem nada. Vamos esperar aí. Espero que ele dê a próxima localização. Ou talvez tenha que chegar lá no outro pra ver a localização de lá, qual é que é. Deixa eu ver no Twitter se tem alguma coisa já, cara. Não, tô mais atualizado que eles aqui na real. Não, aqui ó. Já tem, já lançaram aqui. Fechou. Vamos ver se saiu dia 4. Saiu dia 3. Dia 3 também. Não saiu nada mais. Na Triart lá. Cara, até agora nada. A Triart colocou lá no Instagram deles. Entrar. Putz, faz tanto tempo que eu não entro que eu nem lembro. Vamos ver lá qual que é da Triart. Só isso no momento, cara. Não descobri mais nada aqui esses caras, velho. Vamos ter que ficar de olho lá, cara. Aqui, deixa eu ver se eles atualizaram alguma coisa. Também não. Aqui. Também não. O que será que significa essas cores aqui, cara? Não. Será que tem relação com aquelas fotos lá que eu tava mostrando? Não sei se apareceu as fotos aqui. Acho que não apareceram. Mas as fotos tem umas cores, ó, esse aqui é verde, é amarelo, azul, as fotos têm essa relação também. Deixa eu ver se eu consigo mostrar as fotos pra vocês aqui. Só um minuto. Cara, deixa eu ver se consigo fazer pra abrir uma sequência de pasta aqui. não tem essa merda. Vamos lá, né, cara? Transmissão não é fácil, não tô ligado como que faz ainda. Porra, droga, quando eu abro uma imagem não abre em sequência, cara, que merda é isso. Queria que aparecesse aqui pra vocês, cara. Deixa eu conseguir fazer por aqui. Não, não é isso que eu quero. Bom, galera, não tô conseguindo fazer essa parada aqui, velho. Tá foda. Vamos atualizar lá pra ver se liberou mais alguma coisa. Não. Bom, acho que é isso mesmo, galera. Dá uma olhada no Twitter de novo aqui dos caras. Vai ver se chegou alguma coisa lá. Também não. Talvez esteja demorando um pouquinho mais. Até agora eles não postaram nada. O que dá pra ter como relação é isso aqui, né, cara?
Wake up.
Where am I?
The numbers, Mason. What do they mean?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's start at the beginning. Your name is Alex Mason. 61, Bay of Pigs. What happened?
I have plans for you.
Where did Dragovich take you?
A labor camp called Vakuda. I've given up hope of ever getting out. Victor Reznov found a way.
After your escape, you were assigned to Jason Hudson at the CIA.
I think you couldn't trust anyone. Sometimes even yourself.
Dragovich's endgame, Nova 6.
Mr. Mason, take care of it.
You ready to make history?
Nah, baby.
Reznov, I thought you were dead.
No one fights alone, Mason. Dragovich must be stopped.
It won't end here, Mason.
After your team were killed, you went rogue.
My name is Victor Reznov!
Victor Reznov's been dead for 5 years. That was just in your mind.
Not so. You've been brainwashed. But Reznov sabotaged you.
Dragovich must die.
The Nova 6 strike is imminent. Only you can tell us what the codes mean. You failed! Mason!
Então acho que tem alguma coisa a ver, cara, isso aí com o Call of Duty, entendeu? Porque aparece ali o Mason, né? E daí ele fala assim, você é o único que pode nos dizer onde tá o código, não sei o que lá, entendeu? E aqui os caras printaram essa porra aqui, meu, e não tá significando nada no momento, é só isso que eles têm. Vamos dar mais uma verificada aí. Que isso, cara? Não tem muito o que fazer, tem que esperar sair mais uma barrinha aqui, ó. Mais um direcional, mas até agora não saiu. Creio que seja isso, cara. Agora depende do que a gente vai resolver aí. Tem que ir no Warzone lá no código e resolver aquele negócio. Então é isso aí, galera. Até mais, hein?